Hello, welcome to my video. This one's entitled Biblical Story, the Book of Revelation, Chapter 13, The Number of the Beast, 666. In this talk, I'm kind of going to give my own little perspective on what I think this number means. I'm not really a religious person. I'm actually agnostic, but the imagery in this chapter is quite interesting, and I'll go through a little presentation on it. If you've seen any of my other videos, but even if you haven't, it doesn't matter. The premise I'm going forward with on this is, or the perspective is that the negative qualities or these traits that we consider to be evil or of the devil, the beast, whatever, it actually exists in our shadow aspect of our personalities, or it's buried into our unconscious. Carl Jung talked about this in his collective unconscious idea, and the shadow is this it's not really an archetype, but it's an element of the self where all the repressed things that we say, oh no, that's not me, kind of get pushed into. They don't go away, and that's the whole issue with coming to terms and integrating your shadow. So, and I think talking about the devil or the beast in the Bible is important because well, it shines light on that. I mean, the original one of the meanings, I believe, of the word Lucifer meant light bringer, and they believe was tied to the Greek myth of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and brought the light down to mankind. So the reason to talk about the devil, like I said, I'm not a believer in that there's any devil or God out there. I believe these are all constructs or images in our own mind. We have an image of the ideal man, Jesus, God. We have the image of the worst possible man, creature, the devil, and illuminate or defining out or bringing consciousness to the devil, you're actually kind of defining God as well by saying, well, all those things that the devil is, God is not. So, but to try to repress that, don't think about the devil, you can't do that. Like, don't think of a green elephant. You immediately thought of a green elephant. Your unconscious mind thinks has to first kind of instantiate and create the idea, and then basically repress it. So I think it's important to kind of face this image, right? So let me go through a little presentation, and I'll go through some of the text of this chapter. Chapter 13, Book of Revelation, from the New Testament. So it's the last book in the Bible, and it's got all this crazy imagery in it. It's hard to make sense of, for sure. So this beast, the first beast, there's two beasts in this chapter. The first one is the beast out of the sea, out of the ocean. It's got 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon its horns 10 diadems, which are like crowns. And upon its heads a name of evil speaking. So a name of evil. So it's casting out, calling something a name, instantiating and saying it's something evil. Words have meaning and names have power. When you name something, you are actually the one who is creating an image of that in your mind when you name it. The seven heads, seven makes the number 7 makes all kinds of appearances in all kinds of ancient texts, not only in the Bible. And there's all kinds of theories, different possibilities of why there's such a prevalence of the number 7. I kind of believe, or my opinion follows that of some others. that this is kind of like astrotheology, where seven represents the represented the original seven planets that were heavenly bodies that were visible by the naked eye from Earth, and that's the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are the seven, messengers of heaven, I guess, originally. Now, the beast here described was like to a leopard, and its feet as of a bear, and its mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon did give to it his power and his throne and great authority. So what's interesting, number one, this creature, this beast, is not like fish-like. It's coming out of the sea, but it's not aquatic at all. I mean, I guess polar bears live in the ocean, right? Or swim in the ocean, I mean. But leopards, yeah, leopards will swim. And I guess all big cats will swim if they have to. But and also, but the imagery is of predators that live on the land: a lion, a leopard, a bear, and the dragon did give to it his power. So there's something else more powerful than this beast that was given power by the dragon. And the dragon is an ancient, very ancient symbol. There's like a theory that the dragon is really an amalgam of all the different predators that we have learned to fear and to run away from and to look out for through our evolution and very long evolution, like in millions of years, even when we were little tree shrew-like creatures living in trees. After the extinction of the dinosaurs, our ancestors were hunted. I'm talking tens of millions of years. They were hunted by and killed by snakes, by birds coming down, predatory birds coming down from the sky, and then later on cats during that time, but big cats preyed on primates, or still do, but preyed on us for literally millions of years. And this stuff is deep in our unconscious mind. Like, people have an innate fear of snakes, meaning you can someone who can never see a snake before in their life, or a child, they can become very afraid of a snake very rapidly. We have a natural innate anxiety and fear of that type of creature. And part of that is like I think that's like epigenetics, this new field where you can. They've done experiments where they've exposed rats to a smell, and then that they would never smell in nature, and then traumatize them, basically shock them and then their offspring's like three or more I think they tested up to 3 generations later so those subsequent generations had no exposure to the smell or the related trauma, and then 3 generations later they introduced this smell that their ancestors had experienced trauma from, and the offspring had experienced anxiety and fear. I mean, they could measure their vital signs. So we're alive because our ancestors survived long enough to reproduce. They experienced fear and trauma by almost being eaten or killed by these predators, but then surviving and then having offspring. And that's why we're left with these markers and these traits of proclivity to become anxious, and also project onto those images the negative, those things that make us afraid, right? So that stuff's just interesting when you really think about it, and it goes down to this very, very deep level of our psychology, deep into our unconscious. Now, so here we have this dragon creature that gave authority to the beast, and then they did bow before it. I don't know who they is, the people or everybody, saying who is like to the beast, who is able to war with it. So who has the same power as the beast and can grapple with it, I guess, and deal with it. And there was given to it, to the beast, a mouth speaking great things and evil speaking. So the great things are like good. It was putting, like, trying to, I guess, rally the troops, I would say, like in by speaking great things. And there was given to it authority to make war 42 months, and it did open its mouth for evil speaking toward God. Yeah, so this is what's interesting is 42. I didn't really research this too much, but I did figure out that 42 is 42 months is 3.5 years, which is half of 7 years, and that's interesting to me. And there's something else about 42 that I'll talk about later. So this was the first beast described in this book. The beast out of the earth. This is the second beast. And I saw another beast coming up out of the land, and it had 2 horns like a lamb, and it was speaking as a dragon. So power again came to it, or was given to it by this other creature, the dragon. And it maketh the land and those dwelling in it that they shall bow before the first beast, bow before the beast out of the sea. Yeah, that's interesting. And they maketh the land and those dwelling in it that they shall bow before the. Yeah, there's something there about and it maketh the land. So how is the, you know, I don't, I'm not sure what to make of that exactly, but I think there's something there that I'm missing. But anyway, so we have these 2 beasts. What's interesting is sea and earth, water, earth and water. So we almost have like this yin and yang, like this 2 different aspects of the same type of creature. And they do have the similarity that both these creatures, both these beasts were given authority. There's some relation to the dragon. The first one, authority. Second one, it was speaking as a dragon. It wasn't a dragon, but it was speaking as one. And then the second beast had 2 horns like a lamb. So maybe it was, like a wolf in sheep's clothing type of thing. Like there's all this, the Jesus is the Lamb of God. And I didn't really look up too much of this, but there is a lot of, there's a lot there about the Lamb of God. And so this beast may be like appearing as the lamb, right, to fool people. And there was given, this translation is Young's literal translation of the Bible, so it's not as poetic or with the same flourish, I guess, as King James, but I like the literal simply because it is less polished, I guess. And there was given to it to give a spirit to the image of the beast, that also the image of the beast may speak. So so a spirit to the image. So we have an image separate from it, and then that image is given a spirit, is given life, is given a voice. And it may cause as many as shall not bow before the image of the beast, that they may be killed. So if you don't bow, you're killed. Now the whole thing about heaven, hell, death, because you can die, you can still be alive and die if you've ever experienced like intense despair or intense depression, or you lose hope, there is like a metaphor to dying there, like being alive but being so low in your in a depression to be dead. So yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that totally, but it's interesting the whole the well, we have like multiple layers here. We have the dragon giving authority and giving voice to the beast, and then we have an image of the beast. So we have like multiple layers here of like abstraction, I guess. The mark of the beast, and it maketh all the small and the great and the rich and the poor and the free men and the servants, that it may give to them a mark upon their right hand and or upon their foreheads, and that no one may be able to buy, sell, except he who is having the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him count for the number of the beast, for the number of a man it is, and its number is 666. So the Wikipedia article that I'll link to below has a interesting theory, which I think probably holds a lot of credence, is that that 666 counted is actually the counting up the numbers given to the Hebrew letters that make up the name of the Roman Emperor Nero, and there's quite a bit of theory or evidence, I guess, behind that, which it does make a lot of sense, but I don't. It seems like, why would they pinpoint that one person in the book, or at least in this chapter, and not others? Like, they're calling out other different beasts, a dragon. Why not call out other, I guess, tyrant kings that may have been in history or existed at that time? I don't know. But it does make sense, and I also read that there was some translation that used 616, which then corroborates that, because I guess some other spelling or variation of Nero's name in Greek then translated into Hebrew would, and you count up the letters, the values of the letters would turn into 616. So there definitely is a possibility that all of that just points to the tyrant, and the tyrant king, which definitely the king. There's the king archetype that Carl Jung talks about, and every archetype has like a positive and negative element. There's the good king, the fatherly, positive king, and then there's the tyrannical, evil king, right? Now, the reason why both of these exist in our subconscious, they're like templates for behavior, for personality and action in the world. The reason they both exist is that they both work for survival. Being a good king, you will get lots of goodwill, you will get lots of mates, you will reproduce, you will have your genes will continue on into the future. But if you're an evil king, you will the same thing will happen, except for all the bad reasons. You'll rape and torture and do these horrible things, but evolution doesn't care. The genes will continue down the chain, or continue down into the future. So our ancestors committed atrocious acts. We're alive today because they did. And so the programming is there. It's like dormant code. It's a function call in software that is laying or is sitting there basically waiting to be ran. So we have this yin and yang, this dark shadow aspect that where we are capable of these horrific acts, and we also have the positive, noble qualities of the positive archetype. So it's something to keep in mind, and I'll talk more about that a little bit. But I'm going to put forward a little different theory about the number 666. I mean, the whole idea of like no one may be able to buy or sell except he is having the mark or the name of the beast. So yeah, that kind of goes along with the name of Nero, right? Like Hail Caesar or something. But the other thing with 666, which is interesting, is I think it's the next slide here. No. So before I talk about that, I mean, let me talk about the dragon a little bit. So the dragon, like I mentioned, is the image of the dragon can be this thought of as this amalgam of these different predatory animals kind of like blended together. Because the other thing to realize is our unconscious mind thinks completely in imagery. The conscious mind is discrete, logical, categorizes. We're narrow focused. The unconscious mind is abstract, open, creative. It looks at all. It looks at all possibilities. That's why when I say don't think of a green elephant, you have to think. Your unconscious mind has to bring that up and think about it, right? So the dragon world serpent Leviathan creature has been our all of our negative feelings and intensely traumatic feelings get projected out onto that creature because we are, well, if we are unable to consciously experience them, well, the conscious mind can't handle them. So but the mind, the whole mind needs to express this feeling, so it gets projected out into the world. In this image, the one on the right is the sigil of Baphomet, like I guess the sigil of the Church of Satan, and it has Hebrew letters around there, which I guess spell out Leviathan. I didn't realize, but that image is actually not that old. That was created, I guess, not that long ago in the 20th century. And then on the left is the dragon world serpent, and the other thing about like the dragon, right, it breathes fire, but imagine if you got got a snake bite. Like the pain would be like heat and fire on your body for theoretically days, given that you're not going to die. And most snake bites are not poisonous enough to kill an adult. But in ancient times, well, not that long ago, you got a snake bite. You also probably may have got an infection, and the burning and pain of the bite plus the infection, right? Breathing fire, right? Anyway, and then I copied the whole thing about the image, right? So the image, give a spirit to the image of the beast. So it's almost like, I mean, in my mind, the beast is this unconscious shadow element of all the bad things or all the things we want to repress about ourselves, and what and then project it out into image form, and then given a voice. Yeah, stuff's interesting. So now let's talk about the actual number, right? So the first, I'm making a leap here, but it makes a sense to me, like, because I'll talk about what I think these this 7 these seven primes represent. So the first one was like the beast made war for 42 months, which was half of seven. 42 months is 3.5 years, which is half of 7 years. But it's also the sum of the first six primes plus one. And then the other interesting part of the number 666 is it's the sum of the first seven primes squared, which I thought was fascinating because primes are so critical to anything related to math that. And the other thing too is like math is. I'm not. I wish I was a lot better at math than I am, but math is an eternal truth. Like a mathematical proof or a mathematical discovery will be true in 1,000 years. I mean, if we blow ourselves all up in 100,000 years, people could rediscover math. It'll still be true. All the mathematical truths of the day and discoveries will still be there. Math is kind of an eternal truth. So I find that fascinating to me. Anyway, so these first seven primes. What I'm putting forward is that these seven primes, first seven primes, will represent the seven deadly sins and the seven heavenly virtues. Now, I kind of arbitrarily ascribed numbers of the different primes to some of these, mainly to the sins themselves. But each one, it's like I was saying, the shadow and the light and dark aspects of ourselves, the good and evil, if you want to call it that. Kind of like you can't ever abolish these sins. You can't ever abolish evil. How do you know you did something good? Oh, well, you didn't do something bad. Well, you have to have the concept of the bad to know that you did something good, and vice versa. So, I mean, in my sense, that the right path is the middle way, is trying to balance our natural, maybe our beast-like nature that would take us into the direction of these sins and try to balance them with the virtues. And also something else about sin. The original meaning definition of the word sin was an archery term, and it was to miss the mark. So, you have a target, but you missed the mark, you sinned. I like that idea, mainly because you can get another arrow and you can try again, and you can have some kindness and patience with yourself, but also that it's not this like fire and brimstone shit that so much of that old-timey religion is, where you did this one thing and forever you're gonna burn. It's like, no, you made a mistake. Oh yeah, welcome to the human race. Like we all do, right? So try again. Get another arrow. Take aim of your target again, and take your time and draw it back and hone your skill and improve and that way you can improve your life, right? So I'm gonna I'm gonna try to go through these quick, but it's interesting when I to talk about these, because each one, I heard someone put it the other day that like the deadly sin, or these deadly sins, are kind of like actions without limit, like without any inhibition. Kind of like without any control, without any conscious conscious direction. Anyway, so like the first one, pride. So I didn't include it, but I forget which, it's a proverb that like pride goes before a fall, or pride goes before destruction, or something like that. And yeah, it's like when you're self-righteous, arrogant, very high estimation of one's own worth, rarely admitting you're wrong. That's why pride goes before destruction, because you're not learning. You're not open to any possibility that you're wrong. So you're kind of like going on a fool's mission in a way, that you're not your conscious mind is not like you're not humble. You're not saying, oh wait, I could be wrong here. Never admitting, rarely admitting you're right. Modest, being humble, modest estimation of one's own worth, belief you're not better than anyone else, putting yourself behind everyone else, humility. I mean, both of these are two ends, like two high mountains, one leading to hell, heaven, whatever you want to say. That's not, think like the whole idea of heaven and hell. Like, well, heaven is, I'm thinking in ancient times, right? That's above us, and I think that's why like birds were so not revered, but there's so much imagery of birds and flight, right? Like, because they can fly up and be closer to heaven, and also they can see. Once you're up there, you can see further, and then also watching birds, right? Like that lets you see where they're nesting and get eggs to eat, possibly. So anyway, aside, but heaven is unreachable in that sense. So both of these like are kind of like guideposts, like on two ends of the spectrum, and a human way would be to go down the middle way. And I'll talk about a little bit about the Buddhist, some of the Buddhist ideas, but I believe really, yeah, the middle way is the right way. Because I mean, humility, you can if you're too humble, you can get taken advantage of. You could have, it could be like very low self confidence. So each extreme is not to be manifested, I guess, right? Envy, covetousness, what others longing to have what others possess, spite and resentment at seeing the success of another. Oh, let me go back. I should talk about the numbers. I don't have the numbers here that I ascribed to these to the sins anyway. But like to this one, I ascribe the number 13, mainly because the number 12 makes all kinds of appearances in 12 apostles, but there's all kinds of appearances of the number 12. And in my own, like I said, in my own opinion, there's it relates to astrotheology, and 12 representing the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 constellations in the heavens, right? And then 13, you put yourself above the group, you put yourself above everybody. So yeah. To envy, I ascribe the prime number 2, because you're always looking at that other person, like comparing yourself, longing to have what others or another possesses, spite and resentment at seeing the success of another. Cain and Abel, right? Cain, envious, jealous, huge amount of resentment, right, to Abel. And then the opposite of that, or the virtue, kindness, being warm-hearted, considerate, goodwill, compassion, gentleness. Now, the other thing too that's interesting is that a lot of these sins are like sins of excess, but they're also like without limit, but they're also like they're always seem to be like in a comparison, or in concert with another, I guess. Whereas the virtue can always can also always be applied to yourself. Like it starts with you, whereas maybe the sin almost, well, not in all of these, but in many of them, it seems like the sin can start with your comparison or your focus on another, a judgment of another, compared to, whereas the virtue is kind of more of a internal reconciliation. I don't know, just an aside there. So the sin of wrath, yes, violent anger, rage, fury directed at someone else, vengeance, indignation, subjective experience, meaning like you're the subject and that other mother effer is the object. Patience, like, well, you could have anger at yourself, but the virtue of having patience with other people, equanimity, acceptance, good nature, tolerance of delay or incompetence, having patience with people who are trying to learn, and so they're incompetent until they learn. But having patience with yourself as well. Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, what was the number I ascribed to wrath? That was 3. And I guess the reason was I was thinking like, two fists against like one, like you're directing all your energy at like one other being. But I guess you could be wrathful, rageful against a whole group, or like the school shooters, right? They're angry at the world, or angry at, yeah, mainly the world, I guess, at everybody. Greed, holding on, hoarding. Now I gave this the number 5, the prime number 5, and that's mainly the hand, the 5 digits of the hand: grabbing, grasping, holding on to, hoarding, desire to acquire or possess more wealth than one needs. Like there's like a lacking, like somehow you're not enough. I have to get this, get that. You don't even know that you have more than enough wealth. If like you're a billionaire and you constantly are whatever, I got to get I got to build a super yacht, a bigger super yacht than that mother effer, or whatever. Wanting each transaction to benefit yourself, always looking at the books, like how much money, how much you came out ahead of somebody else, or how much it helped you. Charity being like, well, feeling just full of, feeling like over an overabundance, a feeling of overabundance, of overfilling, over, what I mean, overjoyed, whatever, open and sharing, giving belongings and resources to other, wanting each transaction to help someone else, like getting enjoyment of seeing someone else being helped, charity. Yeah, like the middle way, like you could be so charitous, so full of charity that you give away everything, and I don't know, catch pneumonia because you were outside in the cold because you had nowhere else to sleep or something. I don't know, but so each one of these virtues could be taken too far. Well, obviously the sins as well. Sloth, laziness, inaction, not working, idleness, work shy, slowness, sluggish, having no direction or purpose. Sloth being like retreating, like I'm just gonna lay here. I'm not gonna. It almost seems like a fearful act to be so. Well, I guess it could be like, I'm just gonna, the world, or like using it as an excuse, like, I'm just lazy, I'm tired, I'm just gonna stay in bed under the covers, but really it's kind of hiding from the world in some ways, right? but using that as an excuse in some ways. I gave this the number 7. Why did I give it the number 7? I don't know. Maybe it kind of could look like a snake. Not having legs, right? I don't know. And then the opposite, the virtue being diligence, hardworking, goal-oriented, conscientiousness, determined, perseverance, long-term effort. Yeah, where, so yeah, like being diligent, like a long-term effort, you kind of need a bit of courage to continue making videos that no one watches, and then hoping like, oh, in the long term, this, well, benefits me regardless, so it's worth it just in that case. But also, what else was I going to say about that? Oh, the diligence. Yeah, you could take that way too far. Like you're so hardworking, you're working, 100 hours a week, and you end up in a divorce or something, or your kids don't even know you, or you're a stranger. Except, you know what I mean. You can imagine that type of world, like a total workaholic, very diligent, hardworking person. Taking it too far. So again, the middle road here, I think. Lust, I gave this the prime number 11 because desire, craving for this other one that is to fulfill your sexual desires, strong desire, wanting, longing, craving. Again, it's like, well, sex is obviously a natural desire for us, or else to procreate, to reproduce. Yeah, if we didn't have that, we'd be in trouble. It'd be like freaking pandas going extinct, right? And then the opposite, chastity, abstinence from sexual behavior. Like that can be taken too far where you have your natural sexual desires, but then you're becoming very extremely like rigid in your abstinence and your moral purity, right? So that one's again the middle road, I think, the middle way. Gluttony. Oh, so I gave this one the prime number 17, the highest one in the list, simply because it's eating to excess, having no limits to your appetite. I mean, it's typically you can be gluttonous in lots of ways, but it's typically used to describe eating too much food or too much. The food is a very high fat, high sugar, rich food type of thing too. And then the virtue, temperance, moderation, restrained indulgence, avoiding excess. Like you could take that too far where you become like an acidic, very like, I'm only going to eat one bowl of brown rice a day. Like you could really, well, someone who has like, who's anorexic, right? They're way on the end of moderation, right? But it's definitely then turns into a sin in some ways. Yeah. So those are the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues, and I think that I don't know. That was kind of my feeling about the number of the beast. But what's important about these, or what's one thing to remember, is that when we repress these feelings, you're never going to get rid of, like I said, you're never going to get rid of sin. You can't ever get rid of the quote unquote the beast or whatever. You have to really integrate or I don't want to say get enlightened, but looking at your shadow, a shining light on, using the light of consciousness to shine on these shadow aspects. Well, number one, it's difficult. That's why many people don't do it, because it means you have to face your feelings of that would be, you would label as sinful, let's say. But to face those is to bring light to them, and then well, that's the thing is like if you don't bring light to them, then they stay in the unconscious and they're going to come out. That's my point, is they get projected. Carl Jung talking about the shadow, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. So the ability for anybody to integrate those shadow aspects is I just thought of this, like, the amount of roots that a tree has determines how large it can grow, how high its branches, its leaves reach. So delving into your shadow, into your unconscious, is basically expanding that root structure and shining light on those aspects of yourself that all the negative traits or things you've repressed and hidden away. But if you can come to face them, then the shadow and your unconscious for sure is where much of creative forces and life-giving forces live. So it can then nourish the top structure, the conscious mind, even more. Yeah, he was very profound, and the collective unconscious concept is fascinating to me. Shadow projection. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. What we think, we become. So yeah, I mean, life. I'm kind of taking an aside here. I know, I was just talking about the Bible. Now I'm going to the Buddha or Buddhism, but I think it's very true that what we think, we become, and the projection, like if arises with our thoughts. Not only our thoughts about ourselves, our thoughts about others, and our thoughts about the world. And your thoughts about others, when they're extremely negative, that's kind of like the projection, the repressed part of yourself, or the part of yourself you haven't dealt with, you haven't faced, you haven't brought into the light of consciousness, gets projected into the world. And then the Four Noble Truths. I mean, yeah, because we have the shadow, because to live means to suffer, or I heard the first noble truth to be there is suffering, meaning you cannot escape the difficulties in life. There will be suffering just because of the nature of the world, because of the nature of being alive. The origin of suffering is attachment, desire, or clinging. Clinging to bring something closer to you, or the clinging of something and inside and keeping something else away, pushing something else away so that it doesn't muddle something that you're inside that you're clinging on. So you push it away outside. The cessation of suffering is attainable. The path to the fourth noble truth is the path to the cessation of suffering, which I'm not going to cover, but I mean, Buddhism is a very deep subject, so I just kind of wanted to cover, just kind of bring this perspective about the shadow projection that I kind of see here in these couple of quotes. Here's another quote or clip about projection.
See, Doctor, God didn't kill that little girl. Fate didn't butcher her. Destiny didn't feed her to those dogs. God saw what any of us did that night. He didn't seem to mind. From then on, I knew. God doesn't make the world this way. We do.
Yeah, so that was a clip from a movie, Watchmen. The character in there, Rorschach, is like a hero, anti-hero character. But yeah, we make the world the way it is, like because of our projection onto the world. Like the idea that the devil and the God is all out there, like the devil made me do it type of thing. It's coming from our unconscious, and we have to wrestle. That's the struggle. Is this? It really is. If you can internalize it, that I think is well. It's very difficult, and it's a process. I mean, life is a process. If you think life is a problem to solve, realize that you have separated yourself from life, but you are life. So I mean, you how do you solve the problem of being alive? Well, I don't know how many thousands of books and volumes upon volumes have been written about that issue, right, or that difficulty. But yeah, to wrestle with that, to understand that you're not getting away from your unconscious, right? You're not getting away from yourself. Like so learn how to live with that being, or that aspect, those aspects of yourself. And I don't really have to talk about that stuff. That's a little bit more than this video, but I hope you guys got something out of this. Well, here's one more clip.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you.
You're locked in here with me.
Now, of course, he's a very that character in that scene. It's in a very violent situation, but when it comes to the sins of like the violence that happens in this world, there is atrocious, horrific violence that happens all over the world every day and has happened all through our history. So, I mean, wrestling with that, that being that you're stuck with, inside the prison of your mind, if you want to say, or that's the negative way to look at it. Like, but if you can, I don't know how to describe. I mean, okay, how would you kind of, if you're repressing this stuff, how do you even begin to work with it? Well, I mean, definitely seeking out like a counselor or psychologist to talk about. Like if you're having difficult emotions, obviously you probably would benefit by talking about it. Journaling, writing, going through different programs that help you elucidate your feelings and understand yourself more. Introspection, know thyself. Was that Plato or Socrates? I think Socrates. Well, it was Plato who wrote about Socrates, but so I guess it was Plato. Know thyself. And that's kind of like that's the journey. It's not the destination, it's the journey. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. That's all for now. Please like, subscribe, leave your comments, etc., etc. I have Patreon if you want to help me out. That'd be cool. If not, that's cool. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care.